Good evening. Good evening. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for the second installment of the Love Wars series. Today, we're going to be talking about inner child work, what it means, how to recognize it, how to navigate those waters whenever you come to them. So, what brought me here today? About 6 months ago, I was looking at a photo on my phone. It was a baby picture from like first grade. And I was looking at the photo, just wondering, like, wow, I wonder if she would be proud of us, if she would be proud of me and what's happening in our lives right now. And I know for a fact that she would be. I know that she would be proud and all of the mess and the great times. I know she would be proud, but I know a little bit the little piece of her would have still that same self-doubt that has lingered. Could she rise to that occasion, even though she sees that image of herself in front of her, right? And so I was kind of like thinking about that, and I was like, wow, I should really have a discussion about this because there is a lot that can be learned and talked through because there's so many different avenues of inner child work. So I wanted to come and bring this discussion to you all today. I have panelists, professionals that are here joining me in this conversation, and then all of you are included in the conversation as well. So if you have anything to add, any commentary, any questions, we just ask that you use the raise hand icon to signify that you want a question or a piece of commentary added to the conversation, or you can use the chat feature as well. So I have Charles and Amber here. If you guys could just let us know who you are and what your expertise is and all of that fun stuff.
Hi, I'm Amber. I am an intensive behavioral interventionist, a fancy, uh, wordy way to say I'm a behaviorist. I specialize in behavioral modification in children and young adults with autism and spectrum disorders.
Very cool. And Charles?
Thank you. My name is Charles Bolton. I also work with children. I'm an education specialist, relocating from DC to California right now, originally from California. I'm also pursuing my doctorate in educational leadership and policy from Howard University. And I just think it's really cool that we all work with kids. And so, that kind of inspires us to continuously reflect on that inner child.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, Howard, I see you. Okay, perfect. So we're just gonna dive right in. I just have some questions just as a foundation for the conversation, as it were, and we will see where it leads us. So first, I wanted to ask you all, Amber and Charles, and the audience, what do you consider to be an inner child? What is that? Is it real? Is it kind of like this new age phenomenon? Like, what do you all think it is?
Well, I don't know. I feel simply that your inner child can be that little voice that kind of guides you when you're in your decision making.
Yeah.
I feel like some of our fears, as you mentioned, are rooted in fears that originate from childhood. So I feel like your inner child is really more or less like your conscious almost. Like it helps navigate you through your decision making.
Yeah, definitely.
I totally agree. To add to that, it's your inner child is every memory, it's every moment that you had with your parents or guardians growing up that you recall, that made you happy, that made you mad, that made you sad, that made you think or reflect, that you that as an adult you remember, and it drives you, or it doesn't drive you, but it's that voice, like you said, Amber, that you reflect on and recall from the past.
Yeah, for sure. I always thought it to be my extremes. So if I'm extremely happy, if I'm extremely sad, if I'm extremely agitated or something, I feel like that is always that inner child in me, like that super giddy, like the day before you go to Magic Mountain, that feeling.
Yeah.
That feeling is always like I've always associated that with my inner child. And then also when I have those moments where I'm just fully anxious, like if someone calls you up and says, hey, I have something to talk to you about tomorrow at 3 o'clock, up until tomorrow at 3 o'clock, I am like literally shaking. Like, why couldn't you just tell me this in a phone call or text message? But yeah, those are some of the same things that I associate with inner child work as well, or identifying that at least. So how do you? I guess this question is, how did you recognize it at first? Like, how did you know it was your inner child? Did you have to go to school to figure that out for yourself, or like what events made you pause and say, wow, that's little Darbrielle, that's little Charles, that's little Amber?
For me, it's not that straightforward. I guess I kind of always just felt it. Like, it's now, this may sound weird. It's almost like I see little me telling grown up me things like, hey
Oh, that's
girl,
interesting.
yeah, like, hey girl, are we doing this? Is this what we
Are you
doing?
sure? Okay.
Are you sure? Remember that time when? So I don't know. It's always just kind of been this subconscious thing. And then when you talk about it, you can label it like, oh yeah, okay, I can articulate it as my inner child.
Right. Yeah, definitely. And for you, Charles?
Yeah, heck no, you didn't have to go to school for it. For me, it's first of all, I want to thank you for having this conversation because it caused me to reflect on it.
Yeah.
Sometimes we forget where we're getting our motivation from.
Yeah.
But for me, it's like I want to go back to that little Charles, that little Charlie. They call me Charlie as a kid because he was driven. Well, he was driven. No one could tell him nothing.
Mm-hmm.
He knew that he was going to college. He knew he was getting there some way, despite having parents on drugs, that didn't support all that kind of stuff. He knew what was, and he's made it there. He ain't made it yet, but it's that constant reflection of, the then and the now. And it's just been a constant throughout my life that it doesn't go away, but you sparked it again. Now I'm like, it's conscious right now.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely feel that. When I was a child, I think that one of the things that no one could tell me anything about was my looks. I would always be poured into that way, whether it was my sister or someone in our family. I would always be told that I'm beautiful and that I'm capable and that I could do things. And so that self-doubt came maybe a little bit later in my adolescence, but it was definitely it definitely wasn't there in the beginning. I always knew who I was and how I looked, and it wasn't until I got to school where I was just like, oh whoa, I think I'm different. I really don't understand how, and so like as I grew up in that adolescence, I like realized that some of the traumas that come with being a child and kind of being in that safe, secure space and then being thrown into the world is where you start to learn all of those things and all the I can'ts and the self-doubts and stuff. So very good, very good. Do you think that your inner child is a source of strength for you, or would it be like do you allow it to be a source of strength, or do you allow it to, I don't know, kind of influence you in other ways?
I think it works both ways. I think that your inner child's fears, you still have remnants of those fears when you're presented with a situation that takes you back to that fear, right?
Yeah.
So it can be a hindrance in that regard if you don't have control over those emotions, right? Yeah. But I also find it to be a source of strength because it shows you your progression. When you do we were having a conversation not so long ago about body image, and some of our body image issues root from childhood sometimes, right? Yeah. And how and as an adult you get over those things, it's like your inner child is proud of you, like you released us, like thank you for that. Thank you for seeing me as little me, so you give sight to your little self who probably didn't feel seen.
Yeah, for sure.
Charles? Yeah, I actually I think that, and I have to give an example just because sometimes it's not always a source of strength. For me, coming up as a young gay Black male, I didn't have a clue, but my dad would like call me names and stuff like that. So that's part of my inner child even though, like I said, little Charlie was driven, nothing could stop him, not even his dad.
Yeah.
But in later in life, like what you said, Darbrielle, you start to recall some of those things. And so it kind of holds you back in a way. But then you have to reflect on the other part of yourself, your inner child, and you push through. Because, and I'm grateful that the dominant inner child was very motivational and very determined. Because otherwise, maybe I would have got caught up in something else.
Yeah, definitely. I just want to read a comment from Tracy Raymond. It says, I can relate to what Amber said about much of it being subconscious. Much of my healing with regard to my inner child was learning how to speak on things I didn't know how to speak on before. Yeah, definitely. There's a lot of learning and a lot of time you have to spend with yourself to kind of communicate your needs, your wants, and communicate that back to yourself on how I need to love myself, how I need to show up for myself. So that's definitely useful. Danye says that is such a powerful reflection. Yeah, both of you guys had really, really meaningful reflections. Thank you so much for your vulnerability in this space. And again, I welcome you all to add anything else to the conversation. This is definitely a safe and loving space. I did want to ask Amber a question dealing with fears in regards to your inner child. How did you and your inner child, or you altogether, how did you guys navigate that fear? Like when do you tell your inner child to take a step back and you are going to be in control? Or it doesn't even have to be so separate as that. I guess I just want to know, what are the steps to navigating that fear that you took, if you can remember?
Well, I think that it first starts with acknowledging that you have a fear first.
Yeah.
Because sometimes we're in denial about the things that we're afraid of.
True that.
Right.
Yeah.
So once you acknowledge that you have a certain fear, you can then kind of break it down like, okay, why do I have fears about this?
Yeah.
And more often than not, when you're honest with yourself and you really think about it, you can root it back to something that happened to you as a child.
Yeah.
You know? So I feel like when you're ready and you've done the work and you're going through your healing, once you kind of healed yourself through some of those traumas, I feel like you boldly want to step out and make your inner child proud, the one that was afraid. Yeah. And then you kind of boldly do things that make you uncomfortable, you know?
And that's
growth,
the hard part.
Yeah, growth comes through discomfort.
Yeah.
You know? So I feel like once you're able to get on the other side of it, you feel proud. One, you feel proud of yourself because you were able to do that. Yeah. Because you conquered a fear, right? Yeah. Yes. And you were able to demonstrate this to your inner child. Like, look, we did that. Like, we don't have to worry about that no more. I did that for you. I hope your inner child proud of me, big me, you know, for getting us out of that.
Yeah, I'm in the midst of that work right now. I'm not ashamed to admit that whatsoever. I don't like the limelight at all. I don't like being the center. I can't stand it. And I relate that to always, often being told as a child, you know, stay in a child's place, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, things that are told often to kids in the Black household. You don't know what you're talking about, and et cetera. And so I think that did stunt me a little bit from stepping into a true power. I was always telling myself, oh, I don't want to lead. I don't want to be a leader. It's not for me. I would like to be in the back seat managing things, like, you know, but I think that God said, no, you're wrong. You are a leader. You do deserve to be in the limelight. You need to kind of get little Darbrielle in gear, because you guys have to be ready for this. And so definitely learning in process and in practice, I'm definitely making progress there, but it is hard. It is very hard to kind of navigate those fears. Oh, we have some more comments. Oh, from Monica Johnson. So true. For me, the fear of lack as a child held me back early in my career. Interesting. Monica, would you like to elaborate on that a little bit? If you'd like to unmute, if you're still with us.
So, hey, everybody.
Hi.
Growing up, I'm Darbrielle's sister, in case you guys don't know. So As you guys will read later on in the book, a lot of things that we went through growing up, even before Darbrielle was born, just different situations that I noticed that I went through as a child, like my mother being a single mother, my father being in and out of the picture and everything. So it was like we were trained to survive on the bare minimum. So once I became established in my career, it was early in my career, and this is one of the regrets that I have. I didn't save money like I should have. So it was one of those things where I would work, I would make a good amount of money that day, and it was gone the next day, because it was like, okay, well, I need to go ahead and get this because I may not be able to get it, or I need to spend this because, I feel like I won't have it later. So I realized when I started working on myself and healing that was from my childhood. That stemmed from my childhood and fear of not having it. So let me just get rid of it now.
Absolutely. Yeah. That desperation is a huge part of something that I need to heal through as well. Just because like you said, you feel like it's like sand, it's slipping out of your fingers. You want to hold on to something so tightly, and you imagine that it's just falling away from you, and it's not. It's really not. And I really thank you for sharing that. It's really, really vulnerable and special that you did. I appreciate that. Danye Saunders says, as an adult that's raising an emotionally intelligent youth, it is challenging to create a space for him to express himself so freely when I wasn't given that tool. My inner child is sometimes jealous of his freedom. Wow. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting, Danye. Did you want to elaborate on that if you feel led? That's really, really heavy and really good.
Excuse the loudness in the background. I just thought it'd be nice to be outside today. I think, as someone who is in the youth development industry and has been so for about 20 plus years, the whole premise of that is to lead from an asset-based lens, right? So young people have everything that they need to flourish, and we are just holding a safe space for them to explore those things. Whereas a child that is an 80s baby grew up in deficit-based programming, just say no, don't have sex, like everything was just no, 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 and shut down. And that did not really support or strengthen like the creativity for me to feel like I had the sanctuary to just like try things out, or the safety to fail. And so it was, just this battle in perfection, which is definitely steeped in white supremacy, right? And loss of identity. And so now flipping everything that I learned, everything that I know to be true as someone in their 40s, and giving a young person the tool to be the complete opposite of that. There are moments where I'm like, I want to revert back to be like, you do it because I said do it, right? Or you don't cry, or this, like, and I have to catch myself in the moment, right? And to like go beyond that. And I know it feels like something like so simple, but because we lean to our previous experiences, our lived experience is what is true for us. And we are always combating with like presently showing up better, and identifying the struggles of our lived experience, and dealing with the trauma and whatever is triggering, so to allow a platform for young people to not in 20 years be in a space where they're talking about they did not feel seen, they did not feel heard. And so there are moments where I'm like, how dare he tell me that I made him feel a type of way because of X, Y, or Z. Because children are to be seen and not heard, right? There's so much adultism and steeped into like just a young Black person's experience, right? And that's the only thing I can speak to. And now trying to like just allow this young person to like grow in freedom and to have their own agency to just show up in their authentic truth and guide them through that, right? As uncomfortable as that may be for me, because no one did that for me. I was put into a mold, like this is what we need you to be that. And when you step outside of that mode, we got a problem. And then we're like, we're getting whooped, we're getting punishment, all those things that kind of like, again, diminish how I was showing up as a person.
Yeah. Thank you so much. That was really good. I wonder if you can ever take the opportunity while you're playing around and having like that free time to tap into Danye's inner child and say like, "Hey, let's play. Let's play together along with him. Let's do this healing work along with him." And while you're giving those freedoms to your youth, you can also partake in those freedoms as well as much as you can. Thank you so much, Charles. Yeah.
I just wanted to add to that a little bit. That was awesome.
Yeah.
I am a special education teacher by trade, and Darbrielle knows that I had the opportunity to raise my little cousin as well for 4 years. And I had very similar experiences to you, Danye. What I had to recall was that first, they're human beings. And I don't think growing up in the 80s, well, 90s more, but born in the 80s, that wasn't always our experience, like you said. And I just really appreciate that reflection of your inner child, because I feel like the biggest thing we can all take away today is that we're transferring what we know to younger generations.
Yeah.
And we want to transfer the right energy. And so for Chase, the little guy I raised, it was more so, what can I do to support you? Even though there were those moments, but what can I do to support your growth or what you need? And because of that, he went from a 0.0 to a 3.3 GPA, graduating with that. Because it wasn't about me. I had to reflect on myself, my inner child, what I was raised like, not having all those freedoms and more, to give him that ability to grow on his own. And I think of Jada and Will and Gabrielle Union and what they're doing, some things they're doing. And if you think about it, the world is not ready for that yet. So we have to be the leaders in that. Thank you for letting me share that.
Yeah. Thank you guys so much. Danye, Charles, thank you so much for your vulnerability throughout this. It looks like Victoria Payne had a question. I'd like to ask Charles and Amber if they have any tips or testimonies in regards to working through recurring childhood traumas or fears. For example, when you think you may have overcome a trauma and then something happens to put you back in that fearful place.
I think that much like anything else, sometimes you need refreshers. Therapy is an amazing thing. You want to make sure that you have that kind of support so that you have someone to discuss those very heavy traumas with, so that you can bring yourself back to baseline. But when you're doing emotional work, it's never this straightforward thing anyway. Healing is on a continuum. You can be re-triggered, and I feel like when you're re-triggered, you have to revert back to the very things that helped you heal from it initially. You have to remind yourself that you're safe. You have to remind yourself and give yourself permission and validate your feelings at the same time, and not beat yourself up about feeling re-triggered, because that also compounds the negative feelings around it, and you don't want to do that to yourself.
Yeah.
I always support absolutely having a therapist, to talk to when it comes to trauma.
Yeah.
Someone you trust, someone you're comfortable with, so that even the healing isn't triggering. And I wanted to add that also with the last one too, is maybe what can help you navigate this issue you're having with your son, like in his freedoms, is to maybe when you're doing your own inner child work, give your inner child permission. You can think back to things that happened when you were a kid, when you were told that you didn't know something and you really did know. You can give yourself, validate your inner child's feelings from even back then, now, presently, so that you do feel more validated, and it'll help you it'll allow you room to allow your son to navigate that space as well, unapologetically.
Amber, you said it best, therapy. I'm going to share this, but just so you guys know, I'm a very open book, and we are being honest here, so I have no problem sharing. My father was abusive as well to my mother, and in my later life, I found myself in an abusive relationship, a short-lived abusive relationship, but however, nonetheless, it was. And therapist, I knew what I had to do. Therapy, I knew I had good friends. Remy's on the call. You do the work that you need to do, but yes, you have to understand these things are ingrained in you. I figured out that I liked a certain type of person, and now I have to do the work to reflect on that. Why? Oh, because he's similar to my father. And I was like, oh my gosh, like the epiphany I had. And so I had to start doing the work to make sure that I'm looking for a different type of person in the future. But you have to do the work when you're ready.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. This is great, guys. This is excellent. I do have a heavy hitter kind of a question, if you guys are ready. The next question is, how do you communicate the needs of your inner child to a friend, a family member, or a significant other? This is someone that you trust exponentially. I can go first since I'm kind of leading this whole thing. The way that I communicate my needs to friends, family, I kind of just sit them down and say, hey, this is what I need. This is what happens when this happens in my life. If you would like to support me in this way, this is the way that I like support. It's a very, very straightforward conversation just because I enjoy straightforward conversations about these types of things. It doesn't have to be a whole big hoopla kind of situation. It's just, this is what I need. I would like for you to address me this way. I would like you to handle me in this regard, and then we can move forward. I think that it was hard to do that with my family, just because they see you as, again, baby Darbrielle, baby Amber, baby Charles. They see you in that same mode. But I did feel very strongly to kind of step out and say, hey, this is how you need to approach me. And my sister taught me that. My sister, and her healing process and her strength and the things that she has gone through, kind of invigorated me and fortified me into claiming my voice and making sure that I was heard in the way that I want to, with my family and otherwise. What do you guys think?
I can start. I think that was a heavy hitter because family is so interesting. For me, even with the situation I just talked about, they view me in a certain way because they grew up with me. My sister, closest person to me, she sees me all it's education. I'm always in school, pursuing something, moving across the country, doing whatever I want to do. Yeah. But she still views me in a certain way, a person that can't really explore in those ways. Like it just came off as, oh, this is dumb. Why are you in this relationship when you know it's not right? I got out the relationship right away, but she couldn't understand that, even though it happens. It does happen sometimes. Yeah. And it happened to me, and I just needed someone to understand that, someone to be able to talk to. However, as close as we are, I realized quickly it wasn't going to be her. Yeah. So I did have to go to therapy because she couldn't see me other than the little brother that I am to her that was making a bad decision, and so I had to go elsewhere, and that's okay. We figured that out, but it took time. Yeah. And we're still working through that. But like you said, just a direct conversation, maybe with someone else, but you just giving them helping them understand you, because they don't understand you always.
Yeah. And they're not always ready for that conversation of reacquainting, because those people that are closest to you behave that way. They think that they are the closest to you and that you are not changing. And that's just inherently not true. Amber?
Yeah. So I can answer this question kind of in a twofold. Firstly, I have to say that even with traumas that I've experienced within my inner child, I have to say that foundationally, I have very emotionally intelligent parents, right? And partially my dad, very close. I always kind of had room to respectfully express myself and my feelings. a part of where many of my challenges actually arose as it relates to communication of feelings and those things and having them to be respected was with my grandparents. And it was an interesting thing to navigate because, well, I'll say specifically with my maternal grandmother, specifically, for a multitude of reasons, but primarily that being that my mom had a drug addiction. And so she was always kind of in and out. And my parents divorced due to her addiction, right? It was my dad's attempt to kind of remove my brother and myself out of that situation. But in part, at the time in the early 90s, they rule in favor of the mother, period.
Right.
Like, regardless to who the more viable parent was at that time. So it was always this kind of an emotional tug of war between my dad and my grandparents, because my mom got custody of my brother and I, but it was kind of like really my grandparents did, because my mom was in the streets, you know? And so there was always this battle between my dad being the viable, reasonable parent, trying to vie for time with his own children, with their grandparents, right? So that created a real closeness between me and my dad. Me being the eldest child, it created a bond that we still have today, but it also put pressure on me as a child, because now I have this level of responsibility that a kid really shouldn't have, even though I was never given the responsibility, right? But the emotional responsibility of it was something that no one could have any control over, right? I was very aware of everything very early on. And my dad noticed that. He was like, okay, I gotta protect this because you understand too much. So he always gave me room to really express how I felt about anything. So I appreciate that experience. But the flip of that, where the trauma lies, obviously the relationship with my mom, I've always kind of been parenting her when she wasn't at her best self. And then reverting back to the inner child wanting my mom to parent me when she was doing well, right?
Yeah.
And so there was always that component. And then also I had to watch the dynamic between my grandmother and my mom, because although my mother was a grown ass woman, my grandmother treated her like she was a child. And me being her child, watching my grandmother talk, like, what?
There's so many levels.
I wish my mom, like, I'm thinking as a child, yourself, I wish you would when I'm grown, right? Ain't no way, you know? So I had to contend with navigating that relationship and understanding, like, Grandma, I love you, but if you ever think that you could talk to me like that as a grown person, like it preset things that I was gonna say in my mind as a child if I ever get the opportunity as an adult.
Get it ready. Yes.
Right? So
man,
those preset messages kind of created this harshness between my grandmother and I, even as an adolescent, because I never wanted her to feel like I had this weakness and this meekness like my mom.
Yeah.
Like, even as a kid, like, and I'm protecting my mom too, like, don't talk to her like that. Like, she don't deserve that. She has a problem.
Yeah.
So I always had to deal with that part.
Yeah.
So how you navigate it is you kind of you gotta go through it.
Yeah.
You just have to go through it. There's no way to avoid it.
Yeah.
You know, because to avoid it means that you're living in denial, and that's not just the river, you know.
And is it fair to say that those things will catch up to you if you avoid it?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you'll see it show up in unexpected ways and trigger you and be like, yo, what was that?
Yeah.
You know? So I appreciate the relationship with my dad, because I've kind of always had a continuum of a safe space to navigate those feelings.
Yeah.
You know?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that. Looks like Tracy says, the hardest part for me is the conversation with myself. Why am I reacting this way? How much of this healing is my own work? And before I ask my loved one to adjust their words or behavior, am I asking them for something that will help me heal or something that will allow me to go on with my issues unexamined? Wow, yeah. Tracy, if you wanted to elaborate on that, you definitely can. No pressure, though. We still have some more questions and comments to go through. Monica says, yes, Amber, childhood trauma of being thrown into parenting your parents and your younger siblings. Yeah, definitely. My sister knows a lot about that. Definitely unfair. But those are sometimes the roles that were dealt. And like you said, Amber, you just have to go through them. It is unfortunate and not not ideal for any child to go through, but definitely something that does happen. It looks like Victoria wanted Tracy to read something as well. It says, Tracy, conversations with yourself are definitely hard, especially if you are in a period of growth or change. Sometimes I don't realize my own feelings until I happen to say something out loud. And I'm like, wow, now that I've said that out loud, everything seems so much clearer. Absolutely. Yeah. And that leads into my next question, actually, because I was going to ask you all, what are the rituals, if any, that you have in connecting and conversing with your inner child? Do you light some candles? Do you burn sage? Or do you just simply in the car with the radio off, with the windows down? Like, how do you talk to your inner child? How do you uplift them? What's that ritual like for you all?
I love that question, and this is my favorite thing to do. Yes, I do love candles, but for me, it's just taking a moment alone. It doesn't
Yeah.
even have to be long. There's always something going on in my life, and so it's not going to be long. It's going to be 5 minutes. I'm going to ask them some real hard questions, and
In
I'm
5 minutes?
yeah, I'm gonna think about it all day. But I just have to ask the questions, and I have to write those questions down.
Yeah.
And then I have my notepad, and I'll sit down, and if it's something I need to create boundaries for or something, then I'll write that down, and then I'll like I said, I'm a special education teacher, so we track everything, but I'll
Yeah.
track myself too. How am I doing with this? Reflect on it, and always move towards what the goal that I want.
Wait,
Um,
girls, you write down your boundaries?
I
Let me
do,
make
I
a
do,
note of that.
I do, because the biggest thing, just to stay on the same topic I've been talking about, was with my ex. I had to know, because we had shared bills and stuff, how far I was willing to go, what I was willing to respond to, and I would have to look at that, and ultimately I was able to wind it down, and now he's blocked. Finally, so I got to where I needed to go, and stopped accepting rent and everything. So yeah.
Wow. Congratulations.
Mhm. I gotta see growth at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Weight
Yeah.
loss, everything.
Yeah, I like that. Definitely going to adopt that for myself because I've not been writing down boundaries. I definitely need to begin journaling again because, as far as that goes, I don't have that capacity. But I know that journaling is a huge, huge aspect for some people in their ritual and communicating with their inner child. Amber, do you do anything in particular to kind of converse with sweet little baby Amber? Or
Yes,
any of
sweet
us?
little baby Amber. Little thing that she was. Oh my God. No, definitely. I don't do it. I don't do it regularly. But I do it kind of quarterly. Like I do it kind of on some new moon energy type vibe. I do write down my boundaries, and the reason why I write down my boundaries is because I violate my own boundaries. So I
Oh,
have to remind myself of what they are and why they're important.
that's probably
Um,
why I write them down because I know I'm gonna violate them. Wow.
I,
Wow.
I gotta
What?
write them down. You see it on paper. Something about when you put it on paper, it makes it more real. I'm not even talking about a note in the phone. Like no, on real loose leaf paper. Um, I do write down my boundaries. I do check-ins, self check-ins. Usually when a situation presents itself that seems like it triggers my inner child is when we have that conversation. Like,
Mm,
hey, are we cool with this or no? You know? Um, Are we comfortable?
Yeah.
Do we feel safe?
Yeah.
If inner child says we don't feel safe, then we don't move forward. You know, we tap in until we feel safe.
Absolutely. That's really good. I don't have a ritual. The only thing that comes to mind is my looking at a baby photo of me and just kind of reminiscing and thinking back. If I did have a ritual, I think it would be with candles, with incense, with some music playing, laying in my bed, you know, the most comfortable area, and just kind of let my mind wander. On events of my inner child and things that got me to this place. And my book was probably my biggest ode and my biggest ritual that I've done for my inner child. And yeah, it's been rewarding work. It's been super rewarding. Does anyone else have any commentary or any things that they would like to share about their rituals with inner child work? Any lighting of candles, any Palo Santo popping off, anything that helps you kind of get in the mood to kind of center yourself and speak to your younger selves? Oh, it looks like Victoria Payne. She says, sometimes as a mother slash aunt, I think kids can bring out my inner child or remind me of my inner child. Friends and family can say that my kid is like me and point to examples of my inner child that I may have neglected or forgot about. Wow, that's interesting. Victoria, if you would like to elaborate on that, you're more than welcome. But yeah, if anyone has anything else to add, definitely now is the time.
Monica's raising her hand as well.
Oh, Monica, yes.
So we kind of touched on this, and I said I would save it for tonight. But for me, when I have those moments where I need to go back to my inner child and talk to her and acknowledge her, I light candles, and I usually sit in the dark. Mm-hmm. So it's usually like before I go to bed. And there have been moments, like a lot of times when I go deep into those moments, I usually end up crying. Yeah. Because sometimes, you know, just letting her know, I see you. I see everything that you've done. And I usually go back a lot. Like when I feel like I'm getting like stagnant, that's when I usually go back and talk to my inner child. It's like, no, you're doing everything that you set out to do, everything that you said you wanted to do when you were younger, you've done it. So I think a lot of times for me personally, just because I'm always going, I'm always doing something, and I don't realize a lot of times that goals that I set for myself, I've already accomplished. I feel like I'm not doing enough sometimes. Mm-hmm. And that is part of a childhood trauma. It's like, because I wanted to be seen, I wanted to be acknowledged. So I felt like I had to do above and beyond and be this perfect child and be a perfectionist and everything. And it's really not that serious. And also, working on your inner child, to me, is being able to do childish things and childlike activities, but have grown up conversation along with it. Yeah. Basically being the adult that I needed when I was a child.
Yeah, definitely. That's a good, thank you for sharing that. I want to piggyback and ask you a follow-up question, you and the audience and our panelists. What are some childish things or childlike things that your inner child enjoys? Have you picked up anything lately? A TV show, a food, anything that gives you that feeling of being 5 or being 7 or what have you?
So I work in special education, and whenever I have the opportunity to work at elementary schools and have recess, I legit be on the monkey bars. No lie. Like you climb over, like I climb all the way to the top, mm-hmm. and I legit perch at the top. And the kids love it because they're like, oh my God, you know. So then they come up there, and I don't know, it does something to me. So it's definitely tapping into the inner child too. Yeah. Sometimes I tap into my older inner child too. Sometimes teenage Amber shows up too.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yes. I don't like talking to her a lot though. She has some things going on, but it's fun. Mm-hmm.
Yes. Monica, did you have anything you wanted to add about the childish things or the playing things that you sometimes like to do?
Yes, definitely. Yeah. I still video games. Anything Mario. I'm sitting here with Keisha because we're all sitting here watching you on TV right now. So we were talking about like playing Michael Jackson on the Wii, or I've gotten back into painting. Like the other night, me and Kira painted together. And it was just like randomly, I was like, hey, I text her, you want to paint tonight? Sure. So I was like, it's kind of like I have someone younger to do it with. So it's an excuse to do it. But at the same time, it's like, I'm the one that really wants to do it. Also, like just different outings, like going to the beach or going to the park. Like I still like getting on the swing and swinging, or being on the merry-go-round, like things that brought me joy. And even like now lately, cooking. But it also reminds me of the times like being in the kitchen with grandma cooking, or, you know, just watching her. So it's like, I find that I really enjoy cooking now and cooking for people because my grandma did it.
Yeah.
And it reminded me of that, you know, being close to her.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you so much. Thank you. Man, I have a lot of them. A lot of mine have to do with high school dramas, because I used to watch those a lot when I was a kid. Specifically, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Boy Meets World, and also Boy Meets World because I was obsessed with how they spoke. I was like, nobody talks like that. Who talks like that? Who says things like that? Who says the word audacity at like 10 years old? Who does? Dawson's Creek and Boy Meets World and those TV shows. And so those definitely kind of hit close to home as well. We have some comments. Oh, Misha, she says, my inner child ritual involves building in time to my schedule where I don't have to answer to anyone. Yeah. Time where I can indulge every curiosity and craving. A lot of that has looked like painting, napping, playing video games, snacks that I love, lots of play as a ritual for me. I love that. And then Camille goes on to say, the child enjoys building in sandcastles. Yes. So building sandcastles, definitely. Yeah. Oh, Misha doesn't talk about teenage her either, Amber. And we both like it that way. And then
My
Sharon,
teenage me doesn't want to talk to me either.
if I opened up that cork of teenage Darbrielle, it would just be like a lot of screams, a lot of tears, a lot of
Listen, we
laughter.
tap in, but adult me be talking at teenage me like I'm her mama. Like, stupid. Why did you do that? Still stupid. Like,
Oh my gosh.
you know.
Oh my gosh. And it looks like Sharon Persip says, thank you so much. This session has reviewed to me. I need therapy, a safe place to talk about it. I have too many unresolved issues in family relationships to address. Again, thankful for this piece. Thank you. Thank you for joining, Sharon. I really, really appreciate your attendance. So we are kind of at the end of our session. Unless anyone else has anything to add, this has been such a beautiful event. Thank you guys so much for adding all of your vulnerable pieces, your questions, your comments. It's been superb. Anything else? Any last minute information that we should go over?
Ramona had her hand up at one point. I'm not sure if she has anything to add.
I apologize. Ramona, if you want to unmute, we'd love to hear from you.
I only wanted to share that this has been very, very helpful. And one technique that I learned in my inner child was to parrot back to the person that I needed to talk to. And an example was with my parents. They were having a huge argument. I am sitting there and I'm being quiet just like I've been taught, but I'm listening to what they're saying. And I walked in the room, they told me to leave, and I wouldn't. I'm standing there and they both look at me and said, didn't you hear us? And I said, yes, ma'am, and yes, sir. The only thing I want to know is where's the insurance policy? I was 11 years old. And it scared them so bad that I was talking about insurance at 11. And they didn't fight from that point forward. So that parroting, and I had heard them talk in those terms about, I had heard them talk about insurance and that it was something necessary. So I listened and I stored that. So sometimes that quiet voice that's inside of you is storing and just waiting for an opportunity to use that information.
Yeah.
So, and my fun thing is ice cream cones. To actually buy a box of sugar cones and take a spoon, not a scoop, but a spoon, and pull out sugar the ice cream and put it on that crunchy cone, and you talk about being a child again. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Auntie. I mean, thank you, Ramona. Thank you so much for that adage. I really, really appreciate that. That makes me want some ice cream right now. If anyone else has anything to say, I wanted to ask Charles and Amber if there is anything that we can keep on the lookout for you guys. If there's anything you'd like to plug, we love supporting Black. We especially love supporting Black professionals.
Not a plug, just a prayer that I get through this dissertation.
Oh, you absolutely will. You absolutely will. All the vibes. All the vibes.
No major plug, but we will plug Intelligently Ignorant podcast, which I think is in here somewhere also. That is a lovely podcast. You have two of the three hosts of Intelligently Ignorant, myself and Miss Remy. Check us out. Find us on IG, and it has a link to all of the streaming platforms where you can listen.
Perfect. Well, thank you guys again so much. It's been a joy. I'll see you right here again next month for our next event. Have a great day and happy birthday to my cousin Remy. I love you so much. You do everything, and I love you so much. Have a great night. Bye-bye.